Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please silence all phones. Our program will now begin. Please welcome to the stage Francine Lacroix, anchor for Bloomberg Television.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I hope everyone's having a great forum. So good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for afternoon tea at Bloomberg. It sounds so quaint, and it's not. I'm Francine Lacroix, anchor for Bloomberg TV. There's a lot going on. I'm delighted to welcome you all to Bloomberg House. I want to point to our Wi-Fi information because we're all in need of a good cup of coffee and Wi-Fi, which is the single most common question that we get here at Bloomberg House. You can find that on the screen behind me. A quick reminder, all sessions are being streamed live. So also please be mindful if you do need to get up for that cup of coffee that there are cameras positioned around the room, and kindly silence your mobile phones. Now, we're very active, as you know, on social media, so I hope you'll engage with us there. Follow the conversation using the hashtag Bloomberg House. And finally, if you're not already a Bloomberg.com subscriber, I won't be disappointed, but thank you. You're missing out on the world's most essential news and the highest quality financial data, so you can try it out with the free a 3-month subscription using the QR code, again, on the screen behind me. Now, before we get started, I'd also like to take a moment to thank Kuwait Direct Investment Promotion Authority for supporting our afternoon tea. You'll be hearing from them in just a few minutes in a discussion programmed by Bloomberg Media. But first, please join me in welcoming and giving her a big round of applause to the stage, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves. Chancellor, thank you so much for joining us. I know you've just arrived.
I have.
In Davos.
It's very good to be here.
And there's so much going on.
Is there?
Yeah. Chancellor, let's maybe start with the news of the week. The Prime Minister, Starmer, and others are rebuking Donald Trump and saying he's wrong, and yet they're still trying to stop him escalating. I mean, can you really have it both ways, or is now the time to go strong against him?
We absolutely want to de-escalate. The future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland. But the message that I've come here with this week in Davos is that amidst all the uncertainty and instability in the world, Britain's plan for economic growth, built on the platform stability, investment and trade, is actually going very well. We've had 6 interest rate cuts since I became Chancellor of the Exchequer. Inflation is coming down. The Bank of England expect it to get back to target in the next couple of months. And we've done trade deals with India, with Korea. We're improving our trading relations with Europe. And despite challenges at the moment, we've secured a trade deal with the US as well, which means we've got lower tariffs than pretty much anywhere in the world.
I mean, President Trump has gone after Keir Starmer also on the sale of an island, which he previously approved. So how would you characterize relationships between the two right now?
They're very good. I mean, look, no one wants to see what's happening at the moment in terms of Greenland. Recognise what the president said last night, criticising decisions of a number of leaders. But previously, the US administration, including Secretary of State Rubio, have supported what is happening in Diego Garcia because it's enabling the UK-US military bases to stay open and to continue the vital work they do there for decades to come. And so, we're confident that that is the right decision and has had the support of the US administration.
Jez, if we had a level of anxiousness in Davos right now, it'd be like through the roof. And there's a lot of opinion saying, look, are the UK and EU sleepwalking into disaster right now? because they were blindsided about what to do with Greenland. Like, what's your response to those criticisms?
Well, Denmark is a member of NATO, a very close ally of the UK, and has been a very close ally of the United States. Everybody recognises the importance of the Arctic and the High North, and also the challenges that we face, the Western world, NATO faces in that part of the world. We've just done a big deal with Norway to sell frigates to them, reflecting those sorts of threats. So no one is naive around the threats in the Arctic and the High North. The question is how to face into those challenges. And we firmly believe in the UK and across Europe that we do that by NATO allies, by friends working together to secure the best outcomes, not unilaterally making decisions about another country.
What are the risks if this escalates? Is it to the economy, or does the UK and Europe worry about intelligence sharing with the US and Ukraine?
All of our focus is on de-escalation, not in worst-case scenarios. We have worked incredibly closely with President Trump the last year because we believe it's in our UK national interest to do so. The strategic relationship between the US and the UK, the military and strategic partnership between our countries is more important than the partnership between any two countries in the world. And it's very important for the safety and security of the Western world that that continues, and we're determined that it will do so. Similarly, the fact that we were able last year to secure the economic partnership deal with the US, and we continue work on the transatlantic markets work that we're doing at the moment to make it easier for our capital markets to be better integrated, and firms listed in the UK and the US raising finance in each other's jurisdictions, greater collaboration when it comes to digital assets. All of that is in the UK's national interest, and we'll continue to pursue our national interest vigorously. But I don't think it's in anyone's interest to escalate tensions or to allow rhetoric to be a substitute for hard work and diplomacy.
But you think the trade deal stands? Because at the moment there's wild speculation about whether everything needs negotiating, whether President Trump goes really hard. I mean, how do you model this?
I would just urge people to keep cool heads.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, that's what we did all through last year, and it actually served us pretty well. And whilst trade barriers are going up around the world at the moment, we can all see that. In the last year, barriers to trade with the UK have fallen. We've secured a comprehensive trade deal with India, which will come into force in the next few months. Just taking legislation through both of our parliaments to secure that. That includes trade in services, support for exports, and also around government procurement. That's a huge deal. The deal with Korea, one of the fastest growing economies as well in the G20, is very important for the UK. But most importantly probably is the trade with our nearest neighbours and trading partners in the EU, which was damaged after leaving the EU, voting to leave the EU in 2016. We are now fixing that mess by improving trade relations and cooperation with our closest allies and neighbours.
And I want to get back to the EU in a second. Governor Bailey, though, said that he worries about also President Trump's attacks on the Fed, and that could create shockwaves for the UK. Do you agree with that?
I think that people recognise that certainly with this government and with me as Chancellor, there's huge respect for independent economic institutions, whether that is the Bank of England or the Office of Budget Responsibility. One of the reasons why the UK has been, has had challenging economic times the last few years is because the previous Conservative government, particularly under Liz Truss, both played fast and loose with the public finances, but also undermined the economic institutions that make Britain, and have made Britain, a safe and secure place to invest. We're undoing that damage, working closely with the independent economic institutions, but respecting their independence. And that collaboration and fiscal policy supporting monetary policy has enabled those 6 cuts in interest rates, taking rates down to 3.75%. It's the fastest speed of rate reduction in the UK in 17 years, and that's only possible because of the stability that we've returned to the economy and the decisions we've made on fiscal consolidation. And the IMF say that amongst developed economies, we have got the fastest pace of fiscal consolidation over the next few years. And that gives investors confidence around the stability in the UK, our grip on the public finances and our grip on inflation.
So there's no worry about central bank independence that could also impact or inspire maybe some of the opposition in the UK were they to come to power?
Well, look, we won a massive majority just a year and a half ago. We have 3.5 years remaining of in our term in office, and I'm confident that our economic plan to grow the economy with the stability return to the economy, bringing investment in, global investment, as well as unlocking domestic investment, is the right plan. And in the next few months, as inflation returns to target, with lower interest rates, which are benefiting both households and businesses, that we will see the fruits of that in growth and higher living standards.
Chancellor, I don't know whether you're meeting with Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, here, or if you bump into him on promenade.
Well, I was with Scott last week in Washington. I'm seeing Secretary Lutnick later today. Our Prime Minister spoke to President Trump just over the weekend. You know, as you would expect, there are very close relations between our country at all levels.
So here in Davos, you also have an announcement, which is basically helping out with visas. Tell us a little bit about that, and do you worry that it's going to be drowned in everything else that's going on? Just a little bit of news that we have out there.
So I believe in free and fair trade. I believe in the benefits to businesses and also consumers of open economies, economies that are open to trade, open to investment and open to talent. Have always been the most successful economies, and I want Britain, even in a world where others are putting up barriers to trade and investment and talent, for Britain to be breaking down those barriers. And we are announcing today further changes in our global talent routes into the UK for 3 particular types of visa. The first is for foreign businesses looking to expand their footprint in the UK, working with them so that they can bring in talent as they expand their footprint. Second, for UK businesses in our industrial strategy sectors, which includes financial services, business services, creative industries, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, defence, etc. For those businesses, if they are bringing in talent from overseas into the UK, their visas will be the fees for those visas will be waived. And then the third announcement today is that for really great talent looking to come to UK universities, again, we'll waive those visas, as well as a specific scheme for people, gold medalists in the Maths Olympiad, offering a number of scholarships to UK universities for those people, because we want Britain to be a magnet for global talent in the same way we want it to be the best place in the world to trade from and to invest in.
Chancellor, there's a growing clamour in labour circles, even from some of your own cabinet, for the UK to join a customs union with the EU. Is that on the cards?
No, it was very clear in our manifesto that we wouldn't be rejoining the single market, the customs union, or bringing back free movement of labour. But what we have done already is brought back the Erasmus scheme, which enables young people both from the UK to go and study at European universities, and young people from Europe to come and study at our brilliant universities in the UK. We also have agreements in principle from last May around the UK doing a food and farming deal to reduce barriers to trade at the border, around electricity trading and energy trading, as well as some form of youth mobility within the European Union and the United Kingdom. So we're making progress in all of that, looking to have another summit this year where we can mark ourselves on progress against those ambitions and set new ambitions, because that summit last year was just the start of improving relations between the UK and the EU. And I would just say that, you know, at these sort of times when others are putting up barriers to trade, what Britain is arguing for, and what I believe in strongly, is that those of us who believe in free and fair trade should practice what we preach and reduce barriers between ourselves. That goes to the UK, the EU, Canada, and other allies around the world. And we are determined to lead from the front in that. We've already secured trade deals with countries around the world. We want to do more in the months to come.
But Chancellor, I mean, mathematically, just, if you leave politics to one side, again, rejoining the customs union could be more beneficial. So do you see a future at any point where the UK goes back in?
We can't go back in time. And since we left the EU, we have done trade deals with India, with the US, with Korea. And obviously, you would lose some of the benefits of those trade deals if you were to re-enter a customs union. Things like the benefits of the deal we did with the US for our automotive sector. The deal that we have with India is better than the deal that any other country has with India. So I think that you have to consider all of these things in the round. I don't think we need to return to the customs union to seize greater benefits of free and fair trade. And we are working piece by piece, but with a strategic goal in mind, which is to make it easier for British businesses to sell into European markets and for European businesses to sell into British markets. And when the barriers to trade in other markets are going up, we want to create more opportunities for our businesses to trade with other countries around the world.
There is, of course, big news about a new embassy, a Chinese embassy in London today. How do you see actually the relationship with the UK and China evolving?
Yeah. So we've given planning permission today for a new embassy. Obviously, China already has an embassy in London. This will be a new embassy, a move. But, if you just sort of take a step back, Britain has embassies in almost every country around the world, and almost every country in the world has an embassy in London. They are absolutely vital for diplomatic relations and also for resolving tensions. And so it is right that China has an embassy in London in the same way that it's important and right that the UK has an embassy in Beijing. And I was at our embassy in Beijing just last January when we restarted the economic and financial dialogue with China. It was the first time that we'd had an economic and financial dialogue between our countries for 6 years. And whilst other countries had been securing benefits for their financial services sectors in growing markets in China, we refused to engage. And that was the wrong thing to do. It was not in Britain's interests, and that's why we changed that approach. The Chinese hosted the Economic and Financial Dialogue last year. We secured significant benefits for UK businesses, and we'll be hosting the next Economic and Financial Dialogue with our Chinese counterparts in the UK this year.
If the US continues being a little bit, not a little bit, actually belligerent with Europe, do you see the UK getting much, much closer to China?
Well, let's just look at the numbers. The US trades more as a share of GDP with China than the UK does. Almost every big country in Europe trades more with China than the UK does. And that's because the UK, under successive Conservative governments, retreated from the global sphere for a number of years. And that was a mistake. And we lost out on growth and trade as a result of it. We are pursuing a very different approach, which is to relentlessly focus on our national interest. And our national interest means tackling the cost of living and growing our economy with more good jobs, paying decent wages in all parts of our country. And we only achieve that if we bring more investment in, international and domestic, and if we achieve more opportunities for firms in Britain, employing people in Britain, to then sell the excellent goods and services that we produce in the UK all around the world. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Chancellor, back in Westminster, a lot of people in Labour are thinking about a challenge to your leadership and Keir Starmer's leadership in the coming months, especially if the local elections are very bad. What would you tell investors here in Davos who might be worried about a more left-wing PM and Chancellor getting in?
I really don't think that people need to worry about that. Keir won a massive majority in Parliament. The Parliamentary Labour Party, the Cabinet want the Prime Minister to succeed, even if someone did have the stupid idea of challenging the Prime Minister is incredibly difficult to do so, and I have every confidence that Keir will continue to be Prime Minister all through this term. I will continue to be Chancellor and hopefully into the second term as well.
Nigel Farage is arriving here in Davos. What would Prime Minister Farage, who's doing very well in the polls, mean for the UK economy?
Well, I think it would be very bad news for the UK economy. Nigel Farage believes in closed economies. He does not believe in the UK being open for trade. He sides with our adversaries rather than our friends, including with Russia and their war in Ukraine. And in terms of business, he was the cheerleader in chief for leaving the European Union. He's opposed every trade deal that this government has done, including the deal with the US and including the deal with India. He doesn't believe in an independent central bank or those independent economic institutions which give stability to the UK economy. And I do think that businesses should without getting worried, should think about the consequences of that and not just sit on the sidelines.
I mean, does having him here in Davos, taking meetings, I think also meeting with possibly, we don't have confirmation, the US delegation, does that overshadow some of the work that you're trying to do with your delegation?
No.
Not at all. There's no plans.
He's got 7 MPs in Parliament, Francine. I know that people want to get excited, or maybe a couple more. I mean, who knows how many Tories have defected today? But he's got a small number of MPs. He's lost almost as many MPs as he's gained in this Parliament because he's incapable of working with others. I'm not worried about Nigel Farage. I believe that our plan is the right one. We are improving the cost of living for working people in Britain. We're bringing investment to Britain. Inflation and interest rates are coming down. Last year, we had the second fastest growing economy in the G7. Our plan is the right one. It will, begin to reap dividends this year, especially as inflation gets back to target and the benefits of those trade deals begin to flow.
But there's a perception that he's gaining momentum because of the defections. So,
you've got these people who were defeated a year and a half ago in a general election. Robert Jenrick, Andrew Rosendale, the other people whose names no one remembers, who lost the support of the British public a year ago, who are now changing the rosettes and think that will change their fortunes. It won't, and I do believe that the British public will see through that. They kicked the Tories out for a reason. They're not going to just re-elect them because they're now wearing a teal rosette rather than a blue one.
Chancellor, there are a lot of questions people want to know about taxes. I know you can't tell us about the next budget. I don't know whether you think that this new trade tensions could have an impact of the budget. But holistically speaking, if you were to raise taxes again, would you do it for wealth taxes or general taxation?
We have just had a budget, and what I was able to do in that budget was to build a headroom of £21.7 billion, more than doubling the headroom against our fiscal rules. I think that now puts us in a very strong position that we will not need to do more on that front. I'm not going to be able to write future budgets today. The world is a very uncertain place, but that increase in the headroom was very much, I think, welcomed by markets and has given greater confidence to people that we can have stability on a fiscal front as well. In addition, we've been really clear that the spring forecast from the OBR will not be a fiscal event in the same way that it has been in the past, and reform of the Office of Budget Responsibility means that we can now move to one major fiscal event a year, so that you, Francine, and others don't ask me every week for a year what tax changes are planned. We don't plan any tax changes in the spring, and very much hope after the headroom that we have built in through difficult decisions on tax and spending that provides the stability that we need.
Every week, Chancellor, I thought we were more tenacious. I thought it was every day that we were asking you. What are you most looking forward to in Davos? We have one more minute. I mean, there, we talk about disruption, shocks. There's a lot about AI, but is there something? What have you come here to do?
Well, this is my fourth time in Davos. I came twice as Shadow Chancellor to set out the opposition approach to the economy. I learned a lot during those two visits about what international investors were looking for in the UK. I knew they wanted stability. I knew they wanted better support to leverage in the private sector investment, the cash that was sitting there but wasn't coming to the UK because of that uncertainty. And I know that they wanted reform to how our economy works, planning reform, regulatory burdens lifted, better trade opportunities with countries around the world. That is what we are delivering as a government now. I'm certainly not claiming that the first year and a half in office has been easy or that every decision that we've made has been one that's welcomed by business. But when you look around the world, when you look at the delegations from around the world this week, I hope people see in Britain, I hope that businesses see in Britain, a country that has returned to stability, that is bringing investment, is changing how the economy works, and is open to business, open to trade, open to investment, and as I set out today, open to talent as well.
Chancellor, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency, Dr. Sorbi Al-Mukhaizim, Minister of Finance and Minister of State for Economic Affairs and Investments for Kuwait, and Anthony Gutman, co-CEO of Goldman Sachs International, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Lauren Keel.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we are here in Davos with such a global audience, there is obvious desire for stock taking of which global economies are moving ahead, where does business want to invest right now, where is business pulling back. So we're going to talk today about what it takes to build a competitive economic hub, and looking at one place where we know there is unquestionable growth right now. So Minister, I want to start with you as we talk about Kuwait's economic story. How are you all thinking about where is the investment going? What's changed the most fundamentally in how Kuwait thinks about inspiring economic growth? Thinking in particular about your competitive Vision 2035 plan, how are you all thinking about what does that transformation look like for the country?
Well, thank you, Lauren. I would like to welcome everybody for the session. Let me start by giving a preview of Kuwait's Vision 2035 and what it aims at. Ultimately, it's a transfer. It provides a national roadmap for economical transformation that aims to strengthen the private sector, diversify the economy, aim at lower dependence on oil prices, improve information, technology, digital services, ultimately enabling Kuwait to be a regional financial and commercial hub. So within that perspective, it's essential for us to recognize that 58% of Kuwait's GDP is dependent on oil. However, we have seen non-oil revenue increase year over year, almost 3%. And within that space, the non-oil revenue, the electricity tariffs represent about 20% of that income. Now, this year, because of the implementation of active billing, monitoring, we project an increase of that revenue of almost 100%. So it's important for us to keep on pushing those initiatives and make sure that we see an increase in non-oil revenue as we move forward. ultimately, what we aim at in terms of economic diversification is to have the economy led by the private sector and not government-led. The growth is expected to be from there and not within the tenders that the government is providing. For that to happen, a number of things need to be established and in place. Legislations have to be revised. In 2025, we have reviewed and updated 20% of the legislations in Kuwait. One of the important factors of these legislations, for example, as I was mentioning earlier to Anthony, we expect in the next few months to have the first mortgage law in Kuwait. So you can imagine what impact it will have on the banking sector, for example. Also, the Minister of Housing has announced an active plan of doubling the residential housing market within the next 7 to 10 years. So this implies a lot of construction, a lot of real estate opportunities, and in a stable environment. So we look forward for the next coming years. It's an exciting time in Kuwait, and we think any investment in Kuwait at the time being is the right moment to do so.
And Anthony, for you, for Goldman Sachs International, as you look across your business, across EMEA, what makes a geography attractive to you, and how does your perception of a country shift?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, and thank you to the Minister for allowing us to be on stage with him. Look, when we think about our business, as you know, we've been in business in EMEA generally for 40, 50 years, so we have a long history. As you can imagine, we're operating in all the core markets in Europe. What do we look for? Obviously, we're a business that's driven by growth and returns, and so what we're looking for is markets that provide the opportunity to accelerate and add to that growth and returns equation, obviously that's core at the firm. And so we're constantly looking for places where we can do that. Obviously, a number of the markets we operate in Europe are quite mature. We can come on and talk about Kuwait, but one of the exciting things about Kuwait is it's not mature. It has huge, economic opportunity. And when we really step back, what are the key characteristics? Look, we want to be not just a market that has huge growth opportunity, but a market where we can partner with, political leadership that's stable, that has, financial capacity, that has real ambition, as you just heard from the Minister, and also has a pool of talent. Ultimately, we as an organization only have two assets. We have our capital and we have our people. And so we need to be able to tap into local people. We don't want to just land in a market and parachute in a team. We want to come in and adopt local talent and bring them into the firm. So those are really the key traits that are critical to us as we assess new market opportunities.
And you mentioned the partnership with government. What does an ideal partnership with government look like for you all? You could use Kuwait as an example.
Okay, well, that's a good example.
Just to lead the witness.
Well, look, Kuwait, we're proud to have a 50-year history with Kuwait. I think the reason we're up on stage here today is because, we opened a new office in Kuwait last year. We're very excited by that opportunity. Why did we do that? Because we felt that over a period of time, we built a relationship, with the political leadership that is incredibly healthy and is symbiotic. And what really matters to us, and I said this just before, is that we are engaging in a country where there's huge ambition, where there's also a big private market opportunity, and we see a significant private market opportunity, where there's big financing needs. And again, as you hear, the vision statement that we've just heard, you can see those financing opportunities. And look, the other thing that's very, very important to us is that we feel that we can see that there's a place where the firm can operate consistent with this culture that we have at Goldman's, which is this one GS strategy. And that is exactly what it sounds like, which is the firm operating as one rather than operating in silos. What we found in Kuwait is that the leadership there wants to operate with the firm holistically, and we want to go in and turn up, and we want to not just be bankers and traders and investors. We want to operate holistically and make sure that all parts of the firm are working together to support the country.
Mm-hmm. And Minister, I've heard in many conversations here so far at Davos this year about frustration in places where there's intellectual property developing, ideas developing, but regulation is holding it back. And as you were saying before, you guys are working on the opposite of that. You're trying to make the regulatory environment really be in favor of business and in favor of investment in Kuwait. So how are you thinking about what that partnership looks like with a Goldman Sachs or with another private sector organization. How are you making Kuwait an environment for them that's attractive?
To have a welcoming environment with your partner, you need to understand what are the challenges that they're facing in terms of regulations, in terms of any government imposed and obsolete sets of rules that have been in place, some of them 60 years ago. So in terms of the revision of these legislations, they have two tracks. One is the standard everyday type of legislation that does not affect or ease in the business environment. But we do have a fast track when it comes to any information that we receive from a partner that there is some local legislation that affects the business environment, constrains them from having a competitive entrance into the local market. These are legislations that are monitored by His Highness the Prime Minister. We meet on a weekly basis to discuss any challenges that results in constraining the environment in Kuwait. And in that, we have seen legislations that took 20, 25 years to update the last time being done in a month. So it's just the comparison between what we are seeing now to what was the case before is astonishing. And with that, again, we're working with our partners. We aim for long-term partnerships. And our goal is to ultimately benefit this type of relationship for both entities involved. So we don't treat them as a type of an enemy where we're trying to get the most. No, we want them to be successful, for us to be successful as well.
And Anthony, you all are opening an office in Kuwait. Is it because of this rapid growth and openness that's attracting you there? Are you seeing more investment opportunities? What's incentivized you guys to open an office there?
Well, I mean, all of the above. I mean, look, one of the things I'd really touch though on, which the minister just referenced, I think we're going to hear a lot in Davos this week about volatility, geopolitical volatility. What's important in a market that we go into, any financial institution, is a sense of real stability. And with that stability becomes also, capacity to do some long-range planning and also this fast decision-making. And so when I look around the world at the markets we're operating in, there's a lot of markets which do have quite a lot of volatility and, probably less stability than we'd like right now. Kuwait is a very good example of a place where that isn't the case. And that's important because when we build a new office, we're not making a commitment for the next year or two. We're making a multi-generational commitment, not just in terms of the bricks and mortar, but in terms of moving people, and taking on licenses and doing things that should stand the test of time. So, the combination of stability, a sense therefore that we have visibility that gives us capacity to plan, but also this point around speed of decision making. The other thing you'll hear consistently here and elsewhere is, that we are struggling in Europe with the level of regulation and the lack of pace with which that regulation is changing or deregulating. Again, what Kuwait is doing is a very good example of actually how important it is to Europe. If we could move with the speed that you've just heard, it's going to facilitate investment for obvious reasons.
And Minister, as you are focusing on attracting that investment, are there specific sectors that you all are prioritizing?
Well, I mean, the mega projects, I should say, they're all tendered through the Kuwait Authority for Partnership Projects. Again, to put it in perspective, the authority was established in 2014, 12 years ago. In the last 12 years, 4 projects have been contracted. As of today, 6 are under tender, and 6 are upcoming again in 2026. So that just tells you the speed of how things are changing in Kuwait. One example I like to mention is one of the 4 projects took 7 months to get the approval of the Audit Bureau. This is back in 10 years ago. The second phase of the project took 4 days. So that tells you how much time was wasted before. Now, when we talk about that kind of efficiency in terms of tendering these projects, in terms of involving the private sector, in terms of sharing the risk with expertise in the private sector in the domain that you're targeting. Now, these opportunities range from energy to renewables, to real estate, to digital applications, a number of opportunities, and they will continue. The Ministry of Finance alone has 20 projects that are being planned, mind you, all the other ministries. So we think this is to the benefit of the private sector, locally, and institutional investors abroad. We make sure that the projects are done in a way that makes these investments bankable to attract investors. Hence the dialogue early on with our partners to ensure that we have products that everybody wants to bid for, ultimately resulting in better pricing for the government itself. So this is the right approach, and we have seen certain projects that had one qualified investor who wanted to bid for. Later on, we have, for the same type of project, renewables, we have more than 9. So it tells you that more and more investors are coming to Kuwait, and this is all within the last 6 to 9 months.
Wow. And do you think that, as Anthony was saying, it's one of the things holding business back in places like Europe, that the regulatory environment is so slow? How have you guys been able to make such a rapid change, and how do you keep that going for the future?
It helps that the global markets have uncertainty at the moment. Mm-hmm. And Kuwait has stability. Kuwait has the oldest sovereign fund in the world. Investments all across. Everybody sees Kuwait as a stable environment. We are strong within our GCC unity. We make sure that multilateralism is important for the GCC and for the rest of the world. So in that sense, it's a stable environment, and you know, money will not go to any place where the risk is high. So this is a natural place where we see the new port that will open, the cooperation that is happening with Iraq, Central Asia, and the Gulf, all to the benefit of Kuwait in the future.
It's also important, you know, as if you're opening a new office, as you said, you don't want to import all your talent. So how are you guys helping to build that talent pipeline, to do the digital development, to help skill people within Kuwait to be able to receive, you know, new offices, new investments, to see that growth?
Well, I mean, for the human capital is important for the success of any transformational story. Kuwait has been, the state has been very generous when it comes to that. We have, for example, the top 50 schools around the world, unlimited number of scholarships for students. So any student that gets admitted into the schools that we know, immediately they would go the next day, believe it or not, with a stipend tax-free of $6,000. So you see a lot of attention to these opportunities, and some of them, you know, they become so successful, they don't want to come back to Kuwait, and we're all forgetting this experience. Another thing, we have funded programs for training overseas as well, government-funded programs. So if you have an opportunity to work in Goldman Sachs abroad or any place to train, we would welcome that. We're also revising the national curriculum, K-12, together with the university programs to ensure that it's focused on STEM, coding, AI, digital skills, all of the skills that are required for the next generation. So this is where we see the human capital benefiting the most and getting ready for the next phase in the history of Kuwait.
And Anthony, Goldman Sachs has a long history of education-based programs in Kuwait. Can you tell us a bit about what you've learned from doing that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'd echo what you just heard. You know, what we've done specifically in Kuwait is, for the last 20 years, we've taken a select group, you know, of young leaders that sit in KIA and other organizations that the minister touches on, and brought them to London and put them through a training program. That's been hugely beneficial in a number of ways. A, we think we're making an investment, you know, into the country consistent with the broader relationship we want to have between our two organizations. You know, it obviously helps create more mobility as those people come to London and spend time with our people. We also then send our people back there. And it's just consistent with what we're trying to do, which is be less transactional, more relational as we really, you know, invest across the piece. And I would just say, you know, just to underpin the broader comment around the GCC that the minister touched on, you know, when I look at our business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Middle East is far and away the biggest growth opportunity for us. It has been for quite some time. You know, we've been expanding our headcount there over the last 2 or 3 years. It's probably the highest growth headcount increase that we've seen across the region, and we think it will continue to. And that's really a function of what we see as just, the underlying health of the economy, the ambition of the political leadership there across the region. And as I said, there's, this real sense of stability. And that really is the case across all of our divisions. As you know, the Goldman's really has two core divisions: global banking and markets, which is our investment banking and our securities operation, and then our asset and wealth management businesses. The headcount growth and the investment we're making is spread across all of those, which just shows how broad and holistic, the growth opportunity is in that part of the world.
And are you looking for any new skills and development, in that region, or honestly in your business more broadly, especially with the increase in AI, and as we're seeing people, needing different trainings? Are you guys continuing your same pathways, or are you looking for anything different?
No, look, one of the big things that we've launched in the last 12 months is this capital solutions business, which is a very significant, we think, growth opportunity. It actually, in practice, isn't a new business. It's the aggregation of a number of different businesses that are sat within different parts of the firm that we've all brought under one roof. And what's the point of it is exactly what it sounds like, which is, we think that we're operating in a world where there are significant financing needs, and there are a number of people who can provide that financing. But the complexity of those financing needs and the sophistication of the financing providers, is huge. And therefore, really, Capital Solutions is meant to sit in the middle and help bring people who need that financing together with those who can provide it, in a way that encompasses all their needs across different parts of the capital structure. The reason I raise that in response to your question is because that is, that's a sort of relatively new toolkit. It's very relevant in places like Kuwait, where, I think we're going to find that, the financing requirements span across, everything from pure equity to private credit, public credit, asset-backed financing, and so on and so forth. And we're really trying to be solutions-based rather than just financing-based. And that's, that is a key expertise across our teams. It requires, multi-product skills, and it requires multidiscipline across industries, because as you heard the minister when he talked about transportation and infrastructure and telecoms, our industry bankers have to come together with our capital solutions people, really to provide, one-stop shop, to countries like Kuwait as they seek to continue to invest in their countries.
Minister, as you set the vision with Vision 2035, imagine us 10 years from now, 9 years from now, in 2035. What does success look like for you all? How do you measure if it was successful?
Well, first and foremost, a diversified economy led by the private sector, jobs created by the private sector. Partnerships with international firms and neighboring countries, making sure that we continue the GCC collaboration when it comes to infrastructure projects, for example, railroads between us and Riyadh, trading route through Iraq. All of this is required in order to make Kuwait, as per the vision itself, a regional financial and commercial hub. The banking sector in Kuwait is one of the oldest in the region, and they do possess the skills and capacity to advance all of the functions that are required within the upcoming boom that we expect within Kuwait and the region. Ultimately, the state-led spending needs to reduce, and it becomes part of the private sector mandate to ensure that jobs are created, that the economic growth allows them to create those jobs while increasing their profits and less dependence on oil ultimately.
I know you spoke about the GCC collaboration being critical, but tell us about what you think makes Kuwait unique. How do you want investors or the business community to look at Kuwait in particular?
Well, first of all, Kuwait enjoys stability that makes it very attractive for investors. Kuwait has no political interest when it comes to investments. We don't allow or initiate investments for political purposes. We're always the silent partner. We want to make sure we make active partnerships that are responsible, that are good for the planet. And in that sense, it is attractive for any company that wants to work to make sure that it's working in Kuwait, because there will be no reciprocal requests made in exchange for that. We do believe that the returns in Kuwait will be significant. Again, this is unheard of what's happening now in the history of Kuwait in the last 65 years. We haven't seen anything like it. So also, we don't aim to, when it comes to regional countries, to have a competition rather than cooperation that is beneficial for both. As we do with these partnerships with international companies, we want to do the same to our brotherly and friendly neighbors. In that sense, Kuwait has always maintained a balance in terms of its political stance. And we are sure that this will continue going forward. And this will make it very attractive for investors, knowing that we're always going to be in the middle of the line, asking people to be together rather than, something else.
Anthony, how will you all measure the success of your investments in Kuwait?
How will we?
How will you measure the success of your investments in Kuwait?
Well, look, first and foremost, this is about building a long-term relationship. And so the best measure of success will be if my friend to my right is happy and calling us and saying, please come back and do more. And so, genuinely, we run a business that is focused on, relationships, not transactions. And we have a philosophy that if you build great relationships, the transactions will follow and the revenues will follow. And so, look, of course, financial KPIs matter. Of course, we want to make a return on capital invested. Of course, we want to drive growth. Of course, we want to feel it's a productive return on every person we put in the business and every dollar of capital. But I keep coming back to the same point. When we invest in our businesses, whether it's in corporate CEOs or private equity investors, or countries like Kuwait, really it's predicated on a view that this is a client where we're going to be able to bring to bear all of the resources of the firm in a broad way that they will benefit from, and that we can work together in that regard, to generate great success and to generate financial returns, for both sides.
And then, Minister, final question to you. As you're here in Davos this week, what is your ultimate message that you want to be leaving people with as you are building those connections?
Well, I can talk about any sector in Kuwait, and I can truthfully say that what happened in 25 is nowhere to be compared to any year before. But there is a lot of excitement building in every sector. The level of cooperation has never been seen before. This is a situation, to say the least, needs to be monitored, because we do expect and anticipate great outcomes from what's happening right now in Kuwait. And we're proud of it, and we look forward to the next few years to see what we've achieved.
Fantastic. Well, we'll see if we'll see you back here in 2035 to see if we achieved everything that you guys planned for it. Hopefully sooner than that. Hopefully next year. Amazing. Thank you both so much for the great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the stage John Collison, co-founder and president of Stripe, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
Thank you. Oh, come on. Yes, thanks. I just heard that this is the only interview that John is doing in Davos, so we should all be very excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you. I always love talking to you because you think so big picture and you really try to be a student of the world, but we're going to start specific. Stripe is basically the financial infrastructure that sort of quietly underpins millions of businesses around the world. What microeconomic signals are you seeing that maybe the macro is missing?
Yeah, so we definitely watch this stuff like a hawk. Where we're always looking for the next recession around a corner. They talk about markets climbing a wall of worry, and that's definitely how we feel, where we're worrying as we watch things. But I will say right now, from everything we see, on both the consumer side and the business side, the wallets are open. Spend is healthy. There's a sense of optimism. And especially on the B2B side of things, we see a lot of spend on the AI tools and AI products and services. And I don't know, people like to expend a lot of hot air on, is AI a bubble and all this kind of stuff. The thing we see is everyone's pretty happy with what they're buying. No one is saying, I did a lot of AI enablement of customer service, but you know what? I'm going back to doing it the old-fashioned way. Like, 0 people are saying that. And so we just see a lot of optimism in the business climate.
So you've been investing a lot in AI and e-commerce. And obviously, brick and mortar went e-commerce. Now e-commerce is going agentic, which means more shopping is happening inside chat, or will. What is this going to mean for the economy? Are we all going to spend a lot more? Or will the explosion not be quite the same?
Again, I think the level of spend tends to be dominated by the macroeconomic factors and how consumers are feeling. And again, as far as we can tell right now, consumer spend is holding up pretty healthily. I think what agentic commerce will do is change the nature of spending. And so what's really going on, you all have probably seen it, is we just launched in October with OpenAI buying directly within ChatGPT. And that was a very natural evolution for them because you all have probably had the experience of doing product research within an AI app. It works really well. And it turns out that then going and filling out a whole bunch of web pages and clicking through 7 different screens and where do I put my wallet and everything like that is not a conversion optimizing outcome. And so instead, what first OpenAI with ChatGPT and many of the other AI applications are doing are making it so that the purchase that the product that you discovered directly within a back and forth with ChatGPT, you can then go convert directly there. I think what will then happen is it's a very interesting force that changes the nature of distribution, where previously you might have gone to an aggregator site to find something, you might have done a search or something like that. Now there's a different discovery engine. You can have many more targeted conversational searches. You're looking for furniture and you're saying, okay, I want something that has kind of this feeling, and also, by the way, it should have these dimensions, fits within this space, and these are the manufacturers I like already. None of that is stuff you can do with existing keyword-based search, and you're going to see the conversions based on that. And so we think it could be quite a democratizing force because you could lead to discovery of lesser-known brands.
Now, some merchants are scared of getting sort of cut out of the equations. What kind of conversations are you having about that?
I think if your only value prop is aggregation and discovery within the current paradigms, you're going to have a lot of questions to answer. But if you sell based on the value of the brand and the product, and people have very strong brand affinity, that brand affinity is going to exist regardless of whether people go to your website or whether they buy it agentically or something like that. Or Amazon has invested for decades in their logistics and fulfillment footprint. And so they have phenomenal advantages here to be able to get the product to you very quickly for a low price. And so I think the discovery and aggregation advantages are going to change, but many businesses are differentiating based on different axes.
We've been talking a lot about sovereign AI and sort of the return of digital borders, or a desire, at least for digital borders. Is there such a thing as sovereign payments anymore?
Yes. So this is actually a trend that has gone not widely remarked upon because things like AI get much more airtime. But basically, over the past 10 years, many countries have started saying, we want to be more involved in our digital payments infrastructure, and we want to potentially provide that or have that run through our systems. And so many people point to what the Indian government did with first Aadhaar and then UPI, the government-run payment system, as one of the initial systems there, where it is a very well-designed, low-cost payment system that is now extremely widely used throughout India. What then happened is many other countries saw what had happened in India and said, hey, that's a great idea, we should do that. And so Brazil rolled out Pix, and it was launched in 2019. It is now completely ubiquitous. The Pix network does, on average, 2 transactions per Brazilian per day. It has displaced not just other forms of digital payment, but huge amounts of cash, and we could go through different countries. And so what this has then meant for Stripe and businesses running on Stripe is that our businesses, an Amazon or an OpenAI or someone who's using Stripe to accept payments, they don't want to think about all this stuff. They don't want to, their eyes would, glaze over if we were talking about all these payment differences. They just want to be able to sell their products and offer them in all the countries where people are. And we notice that these AI companies especially are going global much faster than the prior generation of, say, e-commerce or SaaS companies. And so what Stripe has ended up doing for these businesses is acting as the universal Babelfish layer, the translator that can make any customer able to turn up and use their method of payment, which may be a new sovereign method of payment with this product.
So if an AI agent makes a payment, does it belong to any sovereign anymore, or does it even?
Well, now, I'm just talking about customer payments. You're now getting into agentic and kind of machine-to-machine payments, which we are not seeing a huge amount of yet. But that is the really interesting thing coming forward, we think, which is maybe, everyone's talking about agentic coding and the fact that, there's a huge amount of Twitter hype around Claude Code and things like this where people are seeing incredible results. But as your Claude Code instance is going and building something for you, you probably want it to not just be able to kind of write code and execute inside a virtual machine. You probably want it to be able to go use third-party services. And so you need to give your Claude Code a credit card or some way to go spend money in the broader world. And so we're actually building a lot of products for agentic and machine-to-machine payments. And we actually also just incubated a blockchain for very scalable payments, which we think a lot of the utility will be for these kind of high throughput machine-to-machine use cases.
You've been really vocal about stable coins. What do you see as the best use case for stable coins in e-commerce? Is it microtransactions? Is it new types of transactions in agentic commerce that we just don't understand yet but will come?
So we think stablecoins will follow a bit of an arc. Right now, we are already seeing a lot of stablecoin utility, but basically, a lot of the utility that we're seeing has some kind of cross-border component. Because if you're in the US, things kind of work fine, from a domestic point of view. If you're in Europe, similarly, there's low-cost bank transfers. It works well enough. It's not perfect. Whereas, if you are a multinational company looking to pay out people all around the world, including in a lot of emerging markets, there are no good solutions for that today. They're high cost, they're very slow, and there actually just isn't connectivity in a lot of these markets. And so we're seeing a lot of product market fit, and we made 2 acquisitions in crypto recently, Bridge and Privy, and we've had a lot of success with crypto orchestration, where basically people are coming to us because they want to, be able to pay out money around the world, or they want to be able to, build functionality where you can hold dollar balances within your app or something like that. And we're, again, starting to see these successes. One of my favorite of our customers is a company called Felix Pago. They're doing remittances, but it's remittances powered by stablecoins. And so they have this incredibly fast-growing remittance app, and stablecoins are a big part of how they've managed to build such a low friction and compelling product offering. So anyway, that's what is currently working really well in stablecoins, a lot of kind of this cross-border international stuff. But we think there'll be a bit of a WhatsApp effect, where WhatsApp conquered the United States from the outside in. It started as an international phenomenon because people did not have free SMS in many countries, and so WhatsApp became really popular. And then people in the US who had friends outside of the country, or immigrants, or cosmopolitan folks would use it, and now it's become quite popular within the US. But again, it was this outside-in adoption story. We think something very similar is likely to happen with crypto and stablecoins, where it starts for these cross-border use cases, but then that gets the flywheel going and gets people familiar with the product, and they have money in a wallet or something like that. And then you start to see more regular adoption of just using it to power a fintech app, or to send money on a peer-to-peer basis or something like that.
When does the WhatsApp effect happen?
Over the coming few years.
Okay. So you told us you were talking to banks about stablecoins. Can you tell us any more about the progress of those conversations in terms of them working with you on this?
I think banks were much more skeptical of stablecoins 5 or 10 years ago, and now you're seeing much more embrace. I think it helps that things like the term tokenized deposits you'll hear, which is kind of a related but separate concept. It seems like banks are starting to have some success with, and so Jamie Dimon was one of the most quotable, famous Bitcoin bears, and if you Google, he has these he's just extremely colorful and quotable in general, but he's got a bunch of fabulous quotes about how terrible Bitcoin is in all sorts of various ways. And now, they're having a lot of success with tokenized deposits. And so I think the bank posture towards stablecoins is really changing.
You gave me the perfect segue, so thank you. Jamie Dimon recently said that Chase will continue to spend what's needed to compete with companies like Stripe, said Stripe by name. Does that worry you? Does that get you worked up at all?
Look, last time I checked, Jamie Dimon runs the largest and most successful bank in the United States with an $800 billion market cap, so Chase will be fine. And also, just, you don't have to win every market, Like, Stripe, does well in payments, and we do lots of other things, and, we're continuing to expand. JP Morgan does well in all sorts of different, lines of banking. We have great partnerships with them across a whole bunch of different products. So, I don't know, people love to get into the WWE aspect of it, where, people are kind of throwing verbal punches at each other. But, I have a huge fondness for Jamie. We work with JP Morgan a bunch. We nibble and compete around the edges, and both businesses are doing just fine.
Well, I believe his exact words were, "We are going to stay out front, so help us God."
That sounds like Jamie.
Well, I think, you have so many partners, but also pseudo competitors. There's JP Morgan, there's Apple, there's Visa and MasterCard. Like, with Apple, it's been really interesting. They just, sort of pushed Goldman out of their partnership. Now they're working more with JP Morgan. Like, do you have any concerns that Apple increasingly wants more of the stack and that they become more of the enemy part of the frenemy?
Okay, so here's the thing about our space. Payments, by their nature, tautologically, involve two parties. Generally many more than two parties, but at least two parties in that, the transaction from one side to the other side. And so you always have tons of folks where you are partnering with them and maybe competing with them in some areas, and you have kind of productive ways to work together. That is like the name of the game in our industry. And so, like I said, JP Morgan we compete with. They have a payments business. It's more of a legacy business. I don't think it's losing share, and we are doing very well within the payments side of things. But then there's a whole bunch of other areas where we kind of successfully partner with them. With Apple, we have a great partnership with Apple Pay because again, we want to lower friction and allow more digital transactions. And so Apple Pay is a modality that's like so low friction that it allows new kinds of digital transactions to happen. Have you guys ever had the experience of, now sometimes when you go to a restaurant, they maybe have some like digital order ahead, this also ties to labor market and everything like that, but you order at the table, you scan a QR code, and then you just like do Apple Pay, and that's it. It takes like a few clicks. That kind of wouldn't work without Apple Pay because you're there like filling in your payment details and get an error and something like that. It's like, okay, come on, let's get a server over here. That kind of experience can only work if you have something low friction like and ubiquitous like Apple Pay. And so as a result, for us, Apple Pay is amazing because it's lowering the friction for e-commerce transactions, and it's leading to kind of many more of those happening. And so we have a fabulous partnership with Apple on that kind of stuff. Same with Google and all these people. And so there's lots of different parts of the value chain, but in general, we are looking to grow the GDP of the internet. We love when people kind of contribute to that idea.
Okay. You've been really vocal about European tech regulation, and I'm curious, you just recently wrote a big piece about this. I'm curious if at this point you believe the dream of a European tech giant is unrealistic.
No, I think there's lots of good progress, and even in the latest AI revolution, you have a bunch of really successful European breakouts like Mistral, like Lovable. There's a whole bunch of companies, we see in the data, lots of successful European companies. I think the other thing that's helpful within the European AI and tech space right now is that I think the dialogue has really shifted, and in particular around European competitiveness. And if you were talking about the problems of European over-regulation and the bureaucracy with especially the EU a few years ago, you'd have to do a kind of sotto voce, and you're having you're kind of spreading samizdat, illegal thoughts. And now, the Draghi report came out recently and said just that and put it front and center, and I think received a lot of praise for laying out some of the problems. And we had President von der Leyen here today talking about EU Inc. and this 28th regime idea, the 27 EU member states, the 28th being kind of a standard where it could be easy to then incorporate a company. And so for me, the healthiest thing that has happened is how the narrative has shifted and people have accepted that there really was a phase of complete overregulation and a lack of standards where, as an EU company, you were still subject to way too many differences across national regimes. I think that narrative has really shifted.
Okay. Now, as I said earlier, I know you like to think in decades, and you and Patrick, your brother, have made a decision to stay private for the foreseeable future. Of course, everyone wants to know if that's ever going to change. Has there been anything recently that has made you reopen the debate internally between the two of you about whether or not this is still a good idea and why?
We are still not in any rush. And, we used to say that, we said that
I know, well,
10 years ago.
I've been interviewing you for 10 years.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yes,
exactly. So, but now maybe you're kind of somewhat convinced. No, look, it's very early for us, where we genuinely, it is the fastest moving time in our industry that I have felt, period, since we started Stripe. Because we have, a lot that we're doing just generally with Stripe, to serve startups, to serve enterprises all across the gamut. And then you have AI and agentic commerce coming, where we think it is a transformation on the same scale of, commerce moving from brick and mortar to the internet. It's going to be a similar level of transformation where you have people going from kind of directly interacting with websites and apps to doing stuff agentically. And then you have crypto and stablecoins, again, finally starting to work. And we've been tracking crypto the entire time we've been building Stripe. We started Stripe in 2009. The Bitcoin white paper was released in 2008. So these two phenomena have grown up together with similar ideas around making internet money movement easier, and then very different approaches. We've wanted crypto stuff to work for the longest time. And this is the first time that we're seeing really significant adoption of, especially with stablecoins. So we have tons of product transformation, product investment to do, and the cap table of a company does not change the intrinsic value of the business. And so we're just focused on growing the business.
You and I were talking about backstage about just how crazy this time is in tech and how it just feels crazier than it's ever felt before. How do you see the sort of hierarchy in Silicon Valley and globally changing as a result of the moment that we're in right now?
That's a good question. I don't know is the honest answer. I think obviously the really interesting thing that's happening is, one, how quickly AI companies have built very large, successful products. And so it was just a much shorter emergence of the phenomenon than, say, previous waves like social media. The time required from ChatGPT to go from a brand new product to hundreds of millions of active users was much shorter than any of the previous tech waves. And so I think partly people are still getting to grips with all that stuff. Then the second thing is there are, I don't talk to any businesses that don't think AI is a big deal and aren't trying to adopt it within their businesses. And so it's going to be a very rapidly deployed and widely deployed technology. And I'm just curious to see the effects of that. I think we're in the early innings.
How concerned are you about the social issues in society sort of metabolizing all of this change?
I am long-term very optimistic, where I think we've just figured out many tricky things over the years. I'm not saying it won't be bumpy, but
sharing the planet with non-human intelligence that's
exactly
for the very first time ever.
I trust that we will figure it out, but there will be some figuring out that happens.
What are your AI habits? How do you use AI throughout your day? What are you obsessed with? What do you avoid?
Just voraciously back and forthing with the AI apps, be it ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever your favorite app is. I think the information discovery patterns have really changed. I think the other shoe that's about to drop, again, you saw a lot of this enthusiasm for people using Claude Code, is personalized software. And again, we feel like there will be a huge boom in personal software when you can just ask the machine to, not only retrieve you an answer, but build you the software that you need. We came from a world of everyone using identical software that engineers wrote and then deployed very widely, and the world will look different when everyone has their own personalized software that was concocted according to their specifications.
Thank you so much for coming to see us personally and not going to see anyone else. We are very grateful for your time, John.
Thank you, Emily.
John, so good to see you. All right, we've got a marathon, so get comfortable. I mean, okay. Okay. I'll just announce you. Demis Hassabis joining us now, CEO of Google DeepMind. Demis, so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Maybe I was supposed to do that. I'm sorry if I missed something. Okay. So good to see you.
Great to see you too.
Last time I saw you was in San Francisco.
Yes.
I know you are all over the place.
Yes.
I'm curious if this year feels different than the last time you were in Davos. Gemini 3 is out. We've heard that OpenAI called a code red internally. Do you feel like Google got its mojo back?
Well, I'm not sure if that's for me to say, but I feel like we had a very good year. So it's been hard work, really hard work getting our technology and the models sort of back to state of the art. I think we did that with Gemini 3 especially, and Nanobun on our imaging software. And then I think we've also sort of adapted really to this new world of shipping very fast, kind of bringing a kind of startup energy to what we do. And
do you think people underestimated Google or got something wrong?
Yes, maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we always had the ingredients, to be at the forefront of this. Obviously, we've got the long history in it. I think, over the last decade, Google and DeepMind, between us, we've invented most of the breakthroughs that the modern AI industry relies on now. Obviously, transformers most famously, but AlphaGo, deep reinforcement learning, these things. And we have these incredible product surfaces, billion of user services that are natural fits for AI, actually, from search to email to Chrome. And but it's just getting all of that together and organized in the right way. And I think we've done that in the last couple of years. And there's still a lot more work to do, but I think we're starting to see the fruits of that.
If you think you have an advantage, how big do you think your advantage is? How long does it last?
Well, I think everything starts with research, in my opinion, and the models, especially being state of the art on all the different benchmarks, and that's what we focused on first when we put Google and DeepMind together. And I think with the Gemini series, we're very happy with how that's going. There's a lot more work to do there, but I think we're the only organization that has the full stack. From the TPUs and the hardware, the data centers, the cloud business, the frontier lab, and all of these amazing products that can, kind of natural fits for AI. So really, structurally, from first principles, we should be doing very well. And I think there's actually a lot more headroom to come from here.
I wonder what a day in the life of a frontier model leading AI CEO is like. Like, I've read that you do most of your thinking between 1 and 4 a.m.
Yes, that's right.
Is it ever not a code red inside? Do you ever feel comfortable?
No, you never feel comfortable. I mean, we try, code reds are for very special circumstances, but it's always, for the last, I would say, 3-4 years, it's been unbelievably intense. And 100-hour weeks, 50 weeks a year, and that's the norm. And I think that's what you have to do at the forefront of this unbelievably fast-moving technology. It's ferociously competitive out there, maybe the most intense competition there's ever been in technology, and the stakes are incredibly high, AGI and all of that can mean. So commercially, scientifically, and then if you add all the excitement of what we're doing and using it as my passion, as is exploring scientific problems with AI, accelerating scientific discovery itself. This is what I've always dreamed about, and I've worked my whole life on AI towards this moment. So it's sort of hard to sleep because there's so much work to do, but also there's so much exciting things to look into and to push forward.
I know you're very focused on AI driving scientific progress, discovering new materials even. We've seen now Gemini being integrated into humanoid robots. Is the AlphaFold moment for the physical world and AI here? What is that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I spent a lot of the last year actually looking very carefully into robotics. I do think we're on the cusp of a kind of breakthrough moment in physical intelligence. I still think we're about 18 months, 2 years away from we need to do more research, but I think the foundation models like Gemini show the way forward. I mean, from the beginning, we made Gemini multimodal, so it could understand the physical world for multiple reasons. One was so we could build a universal assistant, maybe that exists on your glasses or your phone that understands the world around you. But of course, a second use of that would be for robotics.
So what does that moment for the physical world look like?
I think it's having robots, reliably do useful tasks out in the world. And I think there's a few things holding that back still. Part of it is the algorithms are still not quite there. They need a little bit more robustness. They have to work with less data than you get for the LLMs or the models that work on just digital realm. You can sort of create synthetic data. It's a lot harder to make that kind of data. And there's still sort of some problems in the hardware that are not solved, specifically things like the arm and the hand. Actually, when you look into robotics very carefully, you get a newfound appreciation, at least I did, for the human hand and how exquisite evolution has designed that. It's incredible. And it's very hard to match the reliability, the strength, and the dexterity that the human hand has. So there's still quite a lot, in my opinion, pieces that put together, but there's very exciting things. I mean, we just announced a new deep collaboration with Boston Dynamics. They've got some very exciting robots in Hyundai and actually applying it to automotive manufacturing. And we'll see over the next year how that goes in sort of prototype form. And then maybe in a year or two, we'll have some really impressive demonstrations that we can scale up.
A year ago, DeepSeek seemed cataclysmic for the West. Now, a year later, it's quiet. China seems to have been quieter.
Yes.
Has your opinion on competition from China changed?
Not really. I mean, I didn't think it was cataclysmic in the first place. I think it was a massive overreaction. In the West, it was impressive. And I think it shows that the Chinese are very capable, the leading companies. I think companies like ByteDance actually, I would say, are the most capable. And they're maybe only 6 months behind, not 1 or 2 years behind the frontier. So I think that's what DeepSeek showed. Some of the claims were over-exaggerated about, the amount of compute they used and being so minimal and so on, because they relied on some Western models and also fine-tuning on the outputs of some of the leading Western models. So it wasn't sort of de novo. And the other thing I think so far is not, yet to be seen is, can China actually, the Chinese companies innovate beyond the frontier themselves? So they're gaining, they're very good at kind of catching up to where the frontier is and increasingly capable at that. But I think they've yet to show they can innovate beyond the frontier.
You helped define AGI. You have said we have a 50% chance of getting there by 2030. Is that still your timeline?
It is.
And is AGI still a useful target for you?
I think so. I think it's that is still my timeline. And it's a little bit longer than some others that some of my peers that you'll hear. But my bar is quite high. It's the ability to, a system that exhibits all the cognitive capabilities humans have. And I think we're still clearly quite far from that. That means, in things in like scientific creativity, not just solving a conjecture or solving a problem in science, but actually coming up with the hypothesis or the problem in the first place. And as any scientist knows, finding the right question is actually often way harder than finding the answer. So I don't, it's not clear that these systems have that capability yet. In fact, they definitely don't right now. I think they will eventually, but it's not clear what's needed still. And there's things like continual learning, online learning, going beyond what they've been sort of trained for, and then they're static out in the world. They need to learn on the fly. So there's quite a few, in my view, missing capabilities that are quite critical to what I would regard as an AGI system.
Google's a major investor in Anthropic. Dario was here earlier
Yes.
today. Do you agree or disagree with his prediction that AI will wipe away 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs in 5 years?
I think that's also my timelines and my view on that would be a lot longer. I mean, I think we're starting to see maybe the beginnings of that this year in terms of maybe entry-level jobs or internships, those types of things. But I think we would have to solve a lot more of this consistency that AI doesn't have right now. I call it jagged intelligences. We're very good at certain things, and it's very poor, the current systems, at other things. And if you want to offload or delegate an entire task to, say, an agent, rather than having what we have today, which are more like assisted programs, you're going to need a lot more consistency across the board. It's no good for it to be good at 95% of that task. You need it to be good at the whole task for you to be able to actually just sort of fire and forget on it. So I think there's still quite a lot more to be done before we'll see that kind of disruption.
But that kind of disruption will happen.
I think eventually, sure. I mean, in the limit with AGI, if you have systems like that, I think that changes the whole economy, actually. It's way beyond the question of jobs. I think potentially if we build it right, we're in a post-scarcity world where we've solved some of the kind of fundamental root nodes of the world, like energy sources, new, clean, renewable, basically free energy sources. If we solve fusion, something like that, with the help of AI, new materials, I think we'll be, 5-10 years past AGI, we'll be in a radical, abundant world. And so what does that mean with, to the economy and how society works, actually?
Before we get to a post-scarcity world, though, if we get there, there is so much anxiety about what happens in between. I'm a mom. I know you have kids. Like, what scares you most for them? What do you talk to them about? What do you tell them that's coming? I mean, I've just heard so many things. Oh my gosh, for college graduates are going to have such a hard time.
Well, I don't know about that. Look, I think it's going to be an age of disruption, just like the Industrial Revolution was. Maybe 10x of that, which is kind of unbelievable to think about, and 10 times faster. So I usually describe it, it's going to be 10 times bigger and 10 times faster than the Industrial Revolution.
To your
so
kids.
100x.
Okay.
So 100x of it. No, I say this to everyone, but I think that comes with it huge opportunities. And I also am just a big believer in human ingenuity. We're extremely adaptable because our minds are so general. The human mind is very general. We've adapted. Look at the modern world around us. Our hunter-gatherer minds have managed to build modern civilization. So I think we'll adapt again. I think it's a little bit unprecedented because of the speed of it. Usually it takes 1 generation or 2 generations for a transformation like this to happen, and the magnitude of the transformative power of this technology. But I think the kids today, I'd be encouraging them to get incredibly proficient with these new tools and native with them. And they're almost equivalent of giving them superpowers, in the creative arts, that you could probably do the job of, what would have taken 10 people in one. And I think that means, if you're entrepreneurial, if you're creative with game design, films, projects, you can probably get a lot more done and break into those industries a lot more easily than you could in the past as, a new upcoming talent.
Some folks have advocated for a pause to give regulation time to catch up, to give society time to sort of adjust to some of these changes. In a perfect world, if you knew that every other company would pause, if every country would pause, would you advocate for that?
I think so. I mean, I've been on record saying what I'd like to see happen. It was always my dream of the kind of the roadmap, at least I had when I started out DeepMind 15 years ago and started working on AI, 25 years ago now, was that as we got close to this moment, this threshold moment of AGI arriving, we would maybe collaborate in a scientific way. I sometimes talk about setting up an international CERN equivalent for AI, where all the best minds in the world would collaborate together and do the final steps in a very rigorous scientific way, involving all of society, maybe philosophers and social scientists and economists, as well as technologists, to kind of figure out what we want from this technology and how to utilize it in a way that benefits all of humanity. And I think that's what's at stake. Unfortunately, it kind of needs international collaboration, though, because even if one company or even one nation or even the West decided to do that, it has no use unless the whole world agrees, at least on some kind of minimum standards. And, international cooperation's a little bit tricky at the moment. So that's going to have to change if we want to have that kind of rigorous scientific approach to the final steps to AGI.
So if AGI comes in, let's say, 2030, we don't have the regulation set up yet. Are we destined for something difficult?
Well, then we're, I think I'm still optimistic that enough of the leading players will kind of communicate together and hopefully collaborate at least on things like safety and security protocols. There's a lot of that already. We work, quite closely with Anthropic, for example, on those things. And that would be needed then, maybe kind of more peer-based cooperation if we can't get that international thing to work. But I would, that would be a lot more pressure.
Elon and Sam to cooperate with you?
I potentially, I think I'm on pretty good terms with pretty much all the other leaders of all the leading labs. I mean, I think if the stakes are high enough, and I think a lot of it is understanding what's at stake and what the risks are. And I think that will become clearer to everyone in the next 2-3 years.
So let's talk about the technology and the next curve. Jan LeCun has said he doesn't think transformers and LLMs alone will get us to AGI. Do you agree or disagree? And if they're dead ends, then what are we doing?
Yes. No, I disagree that they're dead ends, but obviously, and I think that's clearly wrong. I mean, they're so amazingly useful already. But I think the way I say it's an empirical question. I think it's a scientific question whether they're going to be enough on their own. I think it's a 50-50 that, just scaling up existing methods with some tweaks will be enough. It might be. And you have to do that. And I think that's useful work because at a minimum, the way I look at it is these LLMs will be a component, a massively important component of the final AGI system. The only question in my mind is it the only component, right? And I could imagine there are 1 or 2 breakthroughs, maybe a small handful, less than 5 that are still needed from here,
less
right?
than 5.
Yes, and so, and those might be things like world models. That's something that Jan talks about. We're working on that. In fact, we have the best world model currently, which is Genie, our Genie system, and I work on that directly, and I think it's very important. But also things like continual learning and having consistent systems that are, don't have these jagged edges that they're good at and not good at. That's a general system shouldn't have that. So I think, better reasoning, more long-term planning. There's quite a few capabilities that are still missing. And it's an open question whether a new architecture or a new breakthrough is needed or more of the same. And we're just, from my point of view, from Google DeepMind's point of view, we're pushing as hard as possible on both those things, both inventing new things and scaling up existing things.
So slightly different but related, Ilya Sutskever has said the era of scaling and making bigger models, make improvements is nearly over. Is that something you agree with?
No, I don't agree. I think his exact quote was that we're back to the age of research. But I love Ilya, and we're very good friends, and we agree on a lot of things. But my view is we never left the age of research, at least from the point of view of DeepMind. We've always invested. In my view, we've always had the deepest and broadest bench. Actually, Google and DeepMind together, if you look over the last decade, we've invented about 90% of the breakthroughs that the modern industry relies on. I think, of course, transformers most famously, but also deep reinforcement learning, AlphaGo, these kinds of reinforcement learning techniques. We pioneered all of that. So if some new breakthroughs are required in the future, I would back us to be the ones, just like in the past, to be the ones to make those breakthroughs, in the future.
Last agree or disagree. Elon says we have entered the singularity.
No, I think that's very premature. I think the singularity is another word for a full AGI arriving, and I think I explained earlier why I think that we're still nowhere near that. I think we will get there, and 5 years, even 5 years, is not a long amount of time if you think about what that is. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done before we have anything that looks like the singularity.
So talk to us a little bit about the culture inside Google right now, to win this race, but do it right. The leadership, how involved are Larry and Sergey right now? How often do you talk to them, and what are their priorities?
Yeah, they're very involved and Larry more on the strategic side, see him at board meetings and other times when I visit the Valley. Sergey's more hands-on on the, he's involved in the coding of, and on the Gemini team specifically, more in the algorithmic details. And it's great having them both energized around where we are, and who wouldn't be, at this moment, absolutely incredible moment for computer science. So just from a scientific point of view, which both of them are, it's an incredibly exciting moment in history, human history, really. And so, of course, everyone wants to be hands-on and heavily involved in that. So that's great. And for us, just as an entity, you know, I'm trying to combine the best of many worlds. So, you know, startup energy of shipping things fast and taking risks and doing things like that, which I think you're seeing the benefits of. You know, the big company resources is amazing, useful, but also protecting the space for long-term research still and exploratory research, not just researching what will deliver in, you know, 3 months in a product. I think that would be a mistake too. So I'm trying to balance all of those different factors together. And, you know, I think in the last year, things have been going well, and I think we can still do better, and I think we still will do better this year. But I'm very happy with our trajectory. I think it's the steepest trajectory of improvement and progress of anyone in the industry.
You are a Nobel laureate, and I know how obsessed you are with, you know, AI powering scientific research. If AI itself, let's say, makes a Nobel-worthy discovery, who should get the prize? The AI or the human?
I think still the human, I would say, because I feel like, I mean, it depends what you mean by completely on its own, right? So for now, these are still tools, and I view them as, you know, like very, maybe the ultimate scientific tool, but sort of better versions of telescopes and microscopes. We've always built tools so that we can investigate the natural world better. We're tool-making animals, basically. That's what distinguishes humans from the other animals. And that's our superpower. And I include computers in that, of course, and AI being the ultimate expression of that. So in some ways, I think of AI, and I've always thought of it as the ultimate tool to do science. And I think for the foreseeable future, that's going to be a collaboration with top scientists, putting in the creative ideas and maybe the hypotheses with these amazing tools that enhance, you know, data processing and pattern matching and the exploration part of science.
You obviously could have sold DeepMind to anyone. And I think all of these companies are asking a lot of us to trust you, especially if regulation doesn't keep up with technology, which history shows it probably won't. Why should we trust you, and why do you think Google, which I would implicitly think you believe, is the place that we should believe in the most? When it comes to something that feels so risky?
Yes, I think you need to judge these companies by their actions and also look into, you know, the motivations, I would say, of the leaders involved in those, you know, those endeavors. And for me and for us, and that's one reason I picked Google as the right home for DeepMind, is several reasons. The main one being that the founders of Google and the way Google was set up by them was as a scientific company. You know, many people forget Google itself was a PhD project, right? It was Larry and Sergey's PhD project. So I felt an immediate affinity with them, and Larry led the acquisition, but also the board, who they collected on the board. You know, you have John Hennessy as the chair, who's a Turing Award winner himself, and Francis Arnold, another Nobel Prize winner. You know, these are unusual people to have on a corporate board. So the whole environment is very scientific, and science and research-led and engineering-led as a culture. And it's deeply ingrained in the culture. And that means doing science at the highest level means being really rigorous, being thoughtful, and applying the scientific method everywhere you can. And I think that's not just to the technology, but it's also to the way you operate as an organization. So I feel like, you know, we try to be very thoughtful and responsible and have as much foresight as possible over the technologies we put out in the world. Doesn't mean we'll get everything right, because it's so complex and so new and nascent and so transformative, this technology. But we hope to course correct as quickly as possible if there, you know, something does go wrong. And then the final thing I would say is just I was just attracted by the types of things Google tries to do in the world. You know, organizing the world's information, I think, is a very noble goal, which is obviously Google's mission statement. And I think it fitted very well with DeepMind's mission statement of, you know, solving intelligence and using it to solve everything else. And that was and I think those two mission statements are natural fit. AI and organizing the world's information naturally go together. And I think those are the types of products that Google's well known for, from Maps to Gmail to obviously search. I think they're genuinely useful products in the world. And I think AI is an easy fit how that would work with those products to enhance them for everybody to use in their everyday lives. And I think that's a great thing for the world. So I'm happy to be contributing to that.
Okay, so post-scarcity world, we're there, people no longer have jobs. What do you personally plan to do with your time once you have achieved all your technical goals, the research is just automating itself?
Right. Well, I would love to use it for, what I will do post the singularity is to use it for exploring the limits of physics. I think that was my favorite subject at school was the big questions. You know, what is the fabric of reality? What's the nature of reality? What about the nature of consciousness? The answer to the Fermi paradox, all of these things. What is time? What is gravity? I'm amazed more people, we just go around our daily lives, not really thinking about these massive questions that for me are always kind of almost screaming at me for like what is the answer to these things, these deep mysteries? And I would like to use AI and to explore all of those things, maybe traveling to the stars as well with the help of, and new energy sources and materials and other things that's unlocked by AI.
Will we all have meaning and purpose if we don't have work?
Well, I think to be honest with you, that's the thing I worry more about than the economics. I think the economics is almost a political question of like, when we get all of these extra benefits and productivity, can we make sure that it's shared for the benefit of everyone? And I think, obviously, that's what I believe in. But then the bigger question than that is, what about purpose and meaning that a lot of us get from our jobs and scientific endeavors? How will we find that in the new world? And I think, we all need some new great philosophers, in my opinion, to help with that and thinking that through. Maybe we'll, get much more sophisticated with our art and exploration that we do and things like, extreme sports. There's many things we do today that aren't just for economic gain, and perhaps we'll have very esoteric versions of those things in the future.
All right, so everyone in the room is wondering what they should be doing. Like, what should I do about AI? What do I do? Sitting here in Davos in 10 years, what is the biggest mistake do you think people in this room will have made about AI?
Well, look, I think there's two things I would say. One is for the younger generation and our kids and so on is the only thing we're certain of is there's going to be a huge amount of change. So I think in terms of learning skills, get ready to kind of learning to learn is the most important thing. How quickly can you adapt to new situations, absorb new information using the tools that we have? For the CEOs and business folks in the room, I think the most important thing to do now is there are many providers of leading models and leading service providers, and there'll be more for these AI models. Pick the partners that you feel are approaching it in the right way. And so, kind of partner with those that are making the changes and approaching this technology in the way that you would like to see in the world. And I think together we can kind of build that future with, AI coming down the line that we all want.
All right, well, here's to the post-scarcity world, everyone. Sounds pretty great if we can get there. No. Thanks, Demis. So good to see you. All right. All right, our marathon continues. Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
So good to see you. Yes, thank you. Another round of applause. Okay. You are coming off a big year. Coinbase joined the S&P 500. Congress ushered in first federal framework for stablecoins. I walked past your house in Davos and it said, "The future of finance is here."
Thank you for repeating the slogan. I like it.
Is it really, really here though, or is there a long ways to go?
It is here. 2025 was a massive year for crypto. We started to get regulatory clarity finally in the US. So we got the Genius Act passed. In the wake of that, we saw 200 companies announce stablecoin integrations. Financial institutions are adopting this at an insane rate. We now power crypto infrastructure for 5 of the top 20 largest banks in the world. It's not just a US phenomenon. We're seeing incredible adoption of crypto in emerging markets where people have high inflation. And stablecoins are on a tear, not to mention prediction markets, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that we're at a breakout moment for crypto, and yeah, it's a big opportunity.
So who is your second year in Davos, right?
Yeah.
Who are you meeting with? What are your priorities for 2026?
Well, we're meeting with world leaders to talk about economic freedom and how crypto can help update their financial system. We're meeting with central bank governors to talk about what they should do with stablecoins. But probably the most interesting group that I'm meeting with here are other bank CEOs, because we are having this moment in DC about getting market structure legislation passed. And the bill's made good progress. It got a strong bipartisan vote in the House. It's now being deliberated in the Senate. And there was a little bit of a blow up last week. I don't know if
a little bit of a blow up. All right, let's go there.
Yeah.
It seemed like a big blow up, but you pulled your support for the bill.
For that current draft.
Yes. Why?
Well, there was too many giveaways to TradFi, if I can say that. Our view is that there should be a level playing field for this is allowed, this is not allowed, and then all the US companies compete. And banks didn't like that. They were, in my view, like the commercial sides of these banks are very smart and the CEOs get it and they're talking to us about integrating crypto. The bank lobbying groups and bank associations are out there trying to ban their competition. And I have zero tolerance for that. I think it's un-American, it harms consumers, and the banks need competition, they need to innovate. We also saw this from some of the securities broker lobbying groups because tokenized equities are a big thing happening in crypto. So there was 3 or 4 kind of red line issues we saw in the draft text. And as I was in DC that day meeting with members of the Senate, I asked them, okay, is there a path to fix this after it comes out of committee? And they basically told me behind closed doors, if this comes out of committee with a bipartisan vote, we can't really help you on the full Senate floor. And so I felt like I had to stand up and say something defending our customers' rights. And I was careful not to opine on what the Senate should do in terms of a markup or not. And I was careful not to say anything. We don't represent the whole crypto industry, but from a Coinbase point of view, I was not comfortable with the draft text as written. And I'm glad that everyone came back for another round of negotiation.
Well, other people have been saying stuff. So since we're going here now, a journalist from Crypto in America said a White House source told her, this is President Trump's bill, not Brian Armstrong's bill at the end of the day, and that the White House is going to pull out if you don't come back to the table. You push back on this. What's really happening?
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is not our bill. I give all the credit really to the Senate, and certainly President Trump has said that this is a core part of his crypto agenda. So my impression is that the White House is fully leaned in here and wants to get something done, as do we, as do the bank CEOs that I met with today. So I'm not seeing any real barriers here. There's some people who were a little grumpy. I think they got caught off guard that we didn't support the draft as is, but it's kind of like that metaphor of 3 blind people looking at an elephant and everyone's trying to figure out, there's probably somebody in the administration who had that point of view, but that's not the people we're speaking with. I don't think have taken that approach. They actually very much want to get this done.
Now, there's this ongoing fight about whether platforms can reward customers for holding stablecoins, which Coinbase does. The banks have argued this is a deposit flight risk. Is that the real sticking point? And what do you think about the flight risk concern?
Yeah, so that's certainly one of the core parts of the debate. I think that some of the bank CEOs I've spoken with have kind of said, hey, we have this really high regulatory burden with being a bank, and what you're doing kind of looks like a bank, and so we think it's super unfair. You should have to have a bank license too. And what I tell them is, well, we're not doing something very important that you do. We do not do fractional reserve lending, which means, for those who don't know, at a bank you deposit your funds. They're not keeping your money there. They're actually lending it out and earning interest on that, and then they pay you a very small percentage of that. Like the average savings account makes like 14 basis points or something. And that's called net interest margin, and that's the whole bank business model. And so that's why they have such high regulatory burden, because there can be a run on the bank. Like your money is not all there. In a crypto world, there's a 100% reserve. So all your money is there. It eliminates this entire category of risk around a bank run. No such thing is possible if there's 100% of the money there. And so we don't need a bank license. We're regulated by the SEC, the CFTC. We have a national trust charter. Like there's different entities, and stablecoin issuers can operate under these models as well. And so we've kind of said, we don't need a bank license. That's what currently already exists in the law. The Genius Act even enshrined that further. And so there has to be some other solution here. How do we flip the banks from thinking of this as a threat to an opportunity where we can all go win?
Let's talk about the opportunity. We started off talking about how crypto has had a lot of momentum lately. A lot of that was when crypto was on a tear. The markets have definitely pulled back over the last couple of months. So here, I know this is always your favorite question, but is winter coming?
Well, there's always short-term fluctuations in crypto, but I think, if you look over the last 2 years, Bitcoin's up like 100%. Pretty great outcome for anybody who invested. I've said publicly I think that Bitcoin could hit $1 million by 2030. I still think that's true. So whatever happens in any given week or month, we try not to track it too much. It's the longer term trend that I think is interesting.
So Bitcoin hit an all-time high last year, 125,000. What about 2026? Let's do a shorter term horizon. Where is it going in 2026?
Well, I don't like to make short term predictions because who knows? It's the market, short term voting machine, long term weighing machine, or whatever. So I think I don't think people should be like day trading, unless you really want to do that. I'm more of a buy and hold kind of guy for the long term. And I think that the cool thing about Bitcoin is that it doesn't, unlike fiat currency, there's no money printer, right? So the supply of it is fixed, it's finite. And so as more people integrate crypto and use crypto, there's more demand and finite supply. That only means the price can go up. That's why I said by 2030, I think it could hit $1 million.
So you wrote a foreword to a new paper this week that talks about the tokenizations of things like stocks and bonds, and it's sort of like, you believe that this gives people access to things, capital markets, that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So, for the average person at home who might think that the stock market is this exclusive club and they can't get in, what's your vision here?
Yeah, so tokenization is kind of a buzzword right now, and it is really important as a trend because the same thing that happened with stablecoins, where a dollar got tokenized, and now suddenly people all over the world can use it, and there's fast, cheap global payments. The same thing is now happening in the equities market and every kind of asset class, really, that people might want to invest in. So there's about 4 billion adults right now who are unbrokered. Some people have heard about being unbanked. There's also about 4 billion people who are unbrokered, meaning they don't have any way to invest in high-quality assets, whether that's American tech companies or the latest BlackRock or Apollo fund or anything like that. And so when you tokenize it, there's a bunch of efficiency gains, but it's also about just democratizing access. And there's sort of like this balance between capital and labor, right? And for people who only make their income from labor, they're oftentimes left out of this wealth creation engine, which is the ability to invest some of their hard-earned money in high-quality assets. So that's what we're trying to do with tokenization of every asset class.
President Trump has said he wants to be the first crypto president. You've been to a few events with him. You've contributed to the ballroom, the inauguration. How much time do you spend with him? What is your relationship like? What are you advocating for? How does he respond?
Yeah, well, I do think he's done a good job of being very crypto forward and helping get some clear rules and legislation passed. I go to DC about once a quarter, but that's not really usually to meet with the president. It's to meet with members of the Senate, our regulators, members of the House when the bill was going through there.
Mar-a-Lago?
No, not yet. But yeah, I mean, I've met him a few times and found him to be constructive on this issue. And I think that if this market structure bill doesn't get moving, he may have something to say about that. And I think it's part of his agenda to get this second piece of legislation through.
But what are you advocating for when you do have time with him or you do have time with the White House?
Getting crypto legislation passed. That's pretty much all we talk about.
But legislation that you like?
Well, it should be fair for everybody so American companies can win. That's what he cares about, I think. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that because clear rules of the road is obviously very important. But a Trump and Melania coin, where do you draw the line?
Yeah. Well, you're getting a little above my pay grade on this. I think the Senate, the Senate is deliberating this back and forth. There's arguments on both sides. There's ethics rules that are already in law. There's ways that presidents and elected officials raise money, they sell T-shirts or whatever. Our democracy needs to figure this out. It's not our main focus.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that democracy. Stablecoins are very popular in Venezuela, for example, crucial part of the economy. And there's this sort of lingering question: will crypto sort of be isolated to emerging markets, at least in a more mainstream way? Will they really break out? In what countries are you seeing the most traction, and what kind of traction?
Well, you're right that there are emerging markets where people have the least access to financial services. And so they have kind of the biggest pain point, and we are seeing a lot of adoption. I think by some metrics, places like India and Turkey and Nigeria are actually per capita some of the biggest adopters of crypto. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be used in the United States. We started in the US, it's still the vast majority of our revenue. There's something like 52 million Americans who've actually used crypto at this point. So it's a massive massive user base. I guess what we're seeing now is that people are using Coinbase as more like their primary financial account. There's kind of the younger generation who are growing up, and they want to be able to, deposit their paycheck, trade crypto, but they also want to trade stocks. They want to trade prediction markets. They want to trade commodities. They want to send money instantly anywhere in the world and maybe get a loan. And they can just get access to better financial services through an app like Coinbase. And so that's what we're trying to build. We call that the everything exchange, where it's like literally every asset class tradable on one platform. So this is a way to update financial services, and that's very much a US phenomenon as well.
You've said developers who don't use AI at Coinbase will be fired. How are they using AI, or how are they supposed to be using AI?
Yeah.
And what's the AI strategy?
Is
anyone not using AI?
I think everyone is at this point. I mean, at least they're trying, right? And so that's all we ask. I mean, we want to stay on the forefront of these tools. We do have about 50% of our code being written by AI now, but of course with human review and strong security controls. And then it's answering about 60% of our customer support tickets, I believe. We're using it to automate some back office functions like compliance. But I actually think maybe the most interesting thing, because AI and crypto I think are the two most important technology trends happening in the world right now. And a lot of people don't realize they're actually quite complementary, because AI agents increasingly need to go get work done in the world, which includes making payments. And in the traditional financial system, to get a credit card or bank account or something, all the rules and regs are built around identifying a human being who's linked to that underlying account or card. And in this new world, AI agents need their own wallets to go and make payments. And so we believe that stablecoins and crypto wallets are going to be the default payment mechanism of AI agents. And we've actually built some really cool tools that people have now started to integrate. So eventually, I think AI agents are going to make more transactions every day than humans.
Do you see them, in crypto, managing portfolios, executing trades?
Yeah, we launched a prototype of an app, or a beta feature, I should say, called Coinbase Advisor, and it does help people do these kinds of services that are typically available only to high net worth clients, right? You could say, tax loss harvesting and rebalance my portfolio and notify me if the market goes down and there's some good opportunities. And so we do have an AI agent service that people can use for that now.
You've entered the prediction markets and the associated legal battles. How does this play out? And what's the opportunity for Coinbase?
Yeah, well, so it's part of our everything exchange vision. We think everything should be tradable, but prediction markets are this really important new emerging category. So I'd say prediction markets, there's a few parts to it. So some of it, frankly, is people betting on these outcomes in sporting games and things like that. That's okay, that's one thing. The more intellectually interesting part of it to me is that people are also betting on what's going to happen in the next week or two, almost like as an alternative to traditional media. Sorry, not to create a competitive thing here. And they're trying to, so it could be on a political election. It could be, what are interest rates going to be next quarter? It could be, is the Suez Canal going to be reopened? Because I need to understand if I can put my ships through there as a multinational. And so people are just trying to figure out what is true or what is going to happen in the future. And what we found is that there's much higher signal when people have to put skin in the game with real money. So I think that prediction markets are potentially an alternative to traditional media in some way. The other crazy idea that could emerge here is that I think policy legislators will use it to understand what policy could be best. So for instance, if there's 3 proposals and you want to say which one is going to lower unemployment the most, you can actually put those proposals out where if they are enacted and this happens, you could get a payout. The market will basically give you very clear feedback about which policy they most believe should be implemented, and maybe that helps legislators decide what to do.
As you mentioned, you're striving to be this everything exchange, not just prediction markets, but trading essentially. Robinhood and others got there first. How much traction are you seeing in some of these newer products?
Yeah, well, we just announced stock trading on Coinbase, prediction markets, back in December, and we've seen really rapid growth of that since then. We also have a number. We actually now have millions of assets, believe it or not, crypto assets you can trade on Coinbase. So it's far ahead of the competition, one you mentioned and others. And we also allow people to trade CFTC-regulated perpetual style futures on Coinbase, which is unique. So I would say we caught up on the things that we were behind on, and we're actually pretty far ahead on some of the other ones.
President Trump pardoned the founder of Binance. Speaking of competition, there's speculation they might try to re-enter the United States. How are you preparing for that?
Well, there's a number of crypto companies that grew up internationally that have tried at various points to come into the US. So far, they haven't been successful. I mean, we have the strongest brand and the most trusted brand in crypto, certainly in the US and a number of other countries where we're the leader. The way I think about this is that our strategy really, we call it like our asset accumulation strategy. So because we have the most trusted brand, people feel comfortable storing their assets with us. We now have about $500 billion of assets. And assets tend to be pretty sticky. People don't move them very often. And the more products you can connect into those assets, people are less likely to churn, right? So that's why we're offering more trading products and DeFi borrow lend and Coinbase card and all these kinds of things. And so we can monetize better the more products we have plugged into those assets. We can invest that back in being the most trusted, and this asset accumulation flywheel just accelerates. So we're storing more crypto assets than any other company in the world I'm aware of by a pretty wide margin, and I think that's going to be defensible for a long time.
We talked earlier about winter, and there is this concern that there's a downturn for the crypto market coming. Are you doing anything to prepare for that? Historically, Coinbase has been an acquirer in some of these situations. Do you see the potential to make some big buys or potential opportunity to consolidate?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, I'm not necessarily seeing a crypto downturn coming. I'm not sure where you're
I think
hearing
there's just
that.
concern because prices have dropped that this could signal that maybe we're in for some more extended lower prices.
To me, that just sort of happens every month. It's either up or down, so I don't know. I don't think about it too much. But we did acquire, I believe, 10 companies last year, and yeah, there's opportunities in any market. When the market is up, we are just trying to scale and onboard new users and double down on the hype. And when markets are down, we do get acquisitive. We could buy back our stock. There's all kinds of opportunities in any market condition.
Now it's interesting because in a room in Davos, Coinbase seems to be the iconoclast, but you're in the crypto and the decentralized world. You're closer to banks, closer to politicians than maybe others. How do you manage the sort of various and competing streams and spirits of crypto?
That's a great point. I mean, yeah, I remember in one day, sometimes I go speak with members of the government and bank CEOs, and then I also go to like crypto meetups where there's a bunch of hackers, and they're like, "Why are you dressed like a banker?" So we've tried to be a bridge between the crypto world and the traditional financial world, because most of the money still resides in the traditional financial system, and we need to be a bridge to get more and more of it into the crypto world so everything can be more efficient and global and cheap. I try to speak. I feel like I'm a translator. I speak a little bit of bank and I speak hacker, and I try to translate between two.
How have your own leadership skills evolved? I mean, obviously it's been amazing. I've interviewed you in the very, very early days and seen you personally evolve. How have you evolved? How have, especially as the system has evolved or not evolved, and the market just fluctuates madly? Like, how have you sort of maintained do you have a spring wardrobe, a winter wardrobe?
I wear the uniform I wear the same thing to work every day, unless I'm at Davos or the East Coast, I wear a suit. But I mean, it's like anybody evolves, right? I think, I was a software engineer early in my career, kind of shy and introverted, to be honest. And I had never managed anybody before starting Coinbase. And then, but you start off and you've got 3 people and 10 people and 25 people. And there were periods where we went through hypergrowth where I felt like I was in way over my head, and I had a great board around me. I hired some great executives. I had some good executive coaches. But building a company is stressful. We now have about 5,000 people. I learned from a lot of the great people that were around me and the board and the executives that I hired. I guess there were certain moments as well where I felt like I had to sense something was the right thing to do, but I knew it would be controversial. And that's actually where I think I grew the most as a leader. So a couple examples of that, where we put out this Mission First blog post back in the height of kind of that activist area, and we said that we're not going to do political activism inside the workplace. We're going to focus on our mission, which sounds kind of obvious now, but at the time that was incredibly controversial. When the SEC, unlawfully, in our view, came out and tried to kill the crypto industry, we sued them. A lot of people told me, oh my gosh, do not sue your federal regulator. That's a terrible idea as a public company. But I knew that the alternative was it would essentially have killed the industry in America, and I couldn't allow that. So we did sue them, and we won. So that was a contrarian view. I would say actually this market structure bill last week was another example of that, where I read through the draft text, our lawyers were looking at it, and I said, this is wrong. This would harm consumers in America. To me, it's un-American and it's unethical for regulatory capture to happen. I don't care how many bank lobbyists there are or whatever, you can't come in and write a bill that enshrines the incumbent and creates an tries to ban their competition. Like, I'm just not going to stand for that. I have zero tolerance, and I'm going to say it publicly. And it pissed some people off, but I think it's going to help us get to the right outcome on this bill, and I feel that's the kind of leadership that I want to exemplify in the world.
All right, so I've been asking this question about AI, but I'm going to ask it about crypto. 10 years from now, what is the biggest mistake people in this room will have made about crypto?
Well, I mean, if they don't have at least 5% of their net worth in Bitcoin, they're probably going to be pretty sad. So I think, the last 10 years, Bitcoin was the best performing asset class. A lot of people missed out, but it's still early days. I think just in general, we're going to see crypto update all kinds of financial services. And even if people who don't really care anything about crypto, they don't even know what it is, they're going to benefit from it because they're going to say, oh, well, this is just, I can earn more rewards on my money, or I can get a loan for a cheaper rate, or I can send money instantly to my family abroad in another country without paying 11% fees, or I want to raise money to build a real estate project or a film or whatever, a media company, and instead of paying 10, 11% to some firm to raise money for you, you can do it instantly on chain. So I think that, that's where we'll be sitting in 10 years with a greatly improved, updated financial system, and hope we get to play a role in creating that.
To the moon?
To the moon.
All right, Brian Armstrong, thank you.
Thank you.
So great to have you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for tea. It's now dark outside. And also, huge thanks to the Kuwait Direct Investment Promotion Authority for making this tea possible with all these great speakers, Brian, Demis, John Collison. Thank you for coming to listen. Thank you. Good to see you.